Ross McDonough rejoins us here on We Love Movies. Of course, Ross from rossvross.com. It wouldn't be the same, Ross, if we didn't give the website a plug.
That's right, Gordon. Yes, of course, rossvross.com was myself and fellow journalist Ross McGuinness. We take two films, they're a bit related. We have at each other over which is the best, and then we count on the readers' votes to see who wins.
Check it out, cracking little website, rossvross.com. Now, last week we were talking about Ridley Scott. This week, with the release of Cop Out, Kevin Smith's new film, we're going to be taking a look at the work of Kevin Smith. A director, a lot of fanboy love for Kevin. When he was over here in Dublin in Vicar Street, sold out. He walked on stage to a standing ovation and left the exact same way, and even said on Twitter it was up there as one of his top 5 sort of stand-up gigs, as it were. I have to say, I am a fan of Kevin Smith. I know an awful lot of people don't really like him, and he's had some ups and downs. Now, Cop Out, his new film, has been getting slated, Ross, and it has to be said, there's not an awful lot of love out there for Kevin Smith at the same time. What is your opinion on the man?
Well, like you, Gordon, I would count myself as a fan of Kevin Smith. Again, I know we were talking about Ridley Scott last week. For me personally, Kevin Smith is a bit of a hit and miss director. More hits than misses, but most of his stuff I like, some of it I don't. Cop Out, I have to say, and I haven't seen it and I can't judge, but it looks muck. It looks absolute muck. I'm not a huge Tracy Morgan fan. My friends have all been trying to get me into 30 Rock. I watched one episode and that was my fill. And I have to say, Bruce Willis, you can see from the poster alone, he's phoning it in.
He really does. It's like the lights are on, but nobody's home. And even Kevin Smith had said when he was performing in Vicar Street that he said he found it really hard to direct him, because when they were making Die Hard 4.0, he thought we'd get on great when we work together now. And originally the film was going to be called A Couple of Dicks, this cop-out movie. And he thought, once we're on set, we've already built up a rapport. And he said Bruce Willis was just the most difficult man. He said he felt beaten down directing him, because he said he was that tough. And as you said, you can see it as well.
Yeah, I suppose maybe A Couple of Dicks, they should have maybe kept that title perhaps. But Bruce, I mean, he's got to the standard where he's like, I guess he's a diva, you know what I mean? It's if he wants to be tough to direct, that's his own call, you know what I mean? I mean, you can't tell Bruce Willis what to do. Like, who are we to say it to him?
That's very true. Now, the first film that Kevin Smith, of course, got all the acclaim for was Clerks. It had just such a minuscule budget, but it was very clever the way he did it. In the little convenience store that he worked in, they shot it at night, shot it in black and white to hide the fact that they were shooting at night. And then it really took off for him at Cannes, and then he became a bit of a little darling. Came out around the same time as Quentin Tarantino was having all the success of Reservoir Dogs, so he was part of that little Miramax club. Second film he released, Mallrats, just went down like a ton of bricks, and then people thought, oh God, is this guy a one-hit wonder?
Well, again, I mean, Clerks was great because, as you say, it was such a small budget, and it hit a nerve with a lot of people. A lot of people identified with the characters on it, and it was such an indie. It was such a great feel to the film. Again, it was almost as if he realised he was onto something with Clerks, and then went, I'll just make another one. Mallrats, it's set in the same place, it's got the same people in it, it's got the same kind of no storyline, just guys sort of monologuing around, and there's no real direction on it. And you can, if you have one hit, you gotta keep it fresh. You can't keep churning out the same stuff.
And even with Mallrats, I've only went back and watched it again not so long ago, and even the dialogue, it's very self-aware.
Exactly.
In it, and I just thought, God, it's one of those films, it doesn't stand up as well as Clerks.
No. And
Clerks, which was the first film, and with the minuscule budget.
And it was because it was forced, Clerks was original, you know what I mean? Mallrats, I'd say people, when they seen it, were like, oh my God, is this all this guy is going to do? I think he rescued himself then with Chasing Amy. That got a lot of acclaim because, he brought, what's called a storyline into it. Something actually happened in it, there's a bit of direction to the film. One of my favourite all-time films, actually, is Dogma. I think Dogma is Kevin Smith's best work, and it is brilliant. I mean, taking the piss out of Catholicism, it's easy, but it's, you're never going to fail. It is one of the best films, I think, ever made.
At home, I have my own little Buddy Christ, little Buddy Christ doll in that, which is great. Jersey Girl was a major stinker. Now, in fairness to him, even though he went ultra syrupy and light, he had just had a kid at the time, and I think this was him kind of gushing about being a father. But Ben Affleck was not in a good place at the time. He was really... The media had it out to get him, hence the reason why Jersey Girl flopped.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think it was his first film after Giggly or wherever it was called, the Gobble Gobble film. I don't think... I think if Ben Affleck had been in Star Wars or Avatar, I think after Giggly, I don't think anybody would have watched it anyway. That was the film that came after that. Everybody knew it was his attempt at a comeback, and they were going to have none of it. I think it was doomed from the start, really.
I think what was kind of lucky for Smith, he's sort of I suppose my studio film before Cop Out was Zack and Miri Make a Porno. Now, we already had trouble with the title on that film because the censors were like, well, porno, you can't really have that, especially with the ads. But Seth Rogen was riding high off the back of Knocked Up. And this is sort of probably one of the reasons why that Kevin Smith went on to direct Cop Out.
Yeah, I mean, Zack and Miri, I haven't seen. It's Kevin Smith directed. It's about a Star Wars porno. It's like the film was made for me, Gordon. And I never let critics put me off watching the film. But every single person who went to see it just said avoid, and I just didn't bother. And I feel bad now that I didn't go see it. But it didn't set the world alight. And I mean, it's easy material for him. Do you know what I mean? But I think he still should have done better critically with that.
It's very true, actually, Ross, because even with the likes of Zack and Miri, it's harking back to even like his early work, like Clerks. Shooting this little porno late at night in the little kind of coffee shop, and it just kind of also suffered from an ending that was too sugary and too sweet. It was almost like, how do I wrap this film up?
Yeah.
But if we kind of go all schmaltzy, that's the way to do it.
Well, I think what Kevin Smith should do, I mean, he's a huge comic book fan. He even writes comic books themselves. He's done forwards for comics. He knows that area. Comic book fans themselves like when comic book fans are in charge of comic book films. We've seen there's been some good comic book films recently, like the likes of Iron Man. I think Spider-Man have been really successful. There's been a lot of crap like Ghost Rider and stuff like that, and Fantastic Four was rubbish. I'd like to see Kevin Smith go with his gut and get behind some comic book films, do what he knows best.
Do you think there's an element of fear because he had written the script for Green Hornet originally and Harvey Weinstein wanted him to make it, and he said, even Harvey Weinstein's quoted as saying that he was kind of sick of Kevin making these talky movies and that Green Hornet would be a step up from him. But Smith just felt scared. He just said he couldn't deliver. He didn't think, I'm not an action director.
It's a real shame because I was really looking forward to that. When I heard Kevin Smith got behind Green Hornet, I was really excited about it. Now, I've heard some talk on the internet. One of my favourite, actually probably my favourite comic book of all time is Preacher by Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon. And again, Kevin Smith did a foreword for one of the graphic novels. There's been some talk that he might direct it, and I've seen Kevin Smith give quotes saying that he actually, as you say, he's actually afraid to direct it because he's afraid he might mess it up. But I don't think there's a better man for the job. I would love to see Kevin Smith get behind that. Now, it's a huge undertaking, huge story, brilliant stuff. There was talk about making it a HBO serial, which might suit it better because it's so big, but I would really, really like to see him involved. Oh, and you heard it here first, there's a vampire called Cassidy in it, from Dublin, and Colin Farrell.
That's right.
Born to play the role. Colin, I know you're listening. If you get your research done, you have to star in this film. If it's made, Colin Farrell, Cassidy the Vampire. You heard it here first.
Perfect. Well done, Ross. I tell you something, could become a casting agent fairly soon. But just before we go, Red State and his ice hockey movie, they look like the two potential projects for Kevin Smith. Would you think it's time as well, maybe, you've hinted obviously with the likes of the comic book going in that direction, that he's the type of guy, maybe leave the comedy to the side, maybe this horror movie, Red State, might be a kind of a new, interesting direction to go if he decides to go with that next to the script that he's written? Yeah,
you were telling me about Red State just before we come on, and it sounds really interesting. I mean, he's done, he's made the same film a couple of times now. I think he should leave it behind, and, a horror, I'd like to see, I'd definitely go see it. I'd like to see him give it a shot. Why not?
Well, great stuff, Ross. Thanks a million for taking a look at Kevin Smith, and don't forget to check out Ross's website, rossvross.com. Ross, we'll talk to you again soon.
Cheers, Gordon.